Chapter 7, Unanswered Questions. February 13, 2010. Dear Yukari. My strength is slowly fading. I expected it to start going at some point, but I need to hold on until graduation at the very least. I will keep my promise. After all, you are one of the people I made that promise to. And it's the only promise left that I can fulfill. You looked absolutely beautiful today. I can't believe that after all this time that I had never actually gotten to see you in archery club until recently. Seeing you in that environment and using a bow when we weren't in battle were something I had never consciously thought about wanting to see. I guess that just goes to show how incredibly occupied we had been all through the year. Still, I've really enjoyed the last couple weeks since the final battle. Being able to properly wait for my girlfriend until she was done with club and then walking home with her every day. It's like I had fulfilled a dream of mine. If only a small one. And seeing you wield that bow for sport and not for defeating shadows was even more uplifting. Not to mention you handle it so gracefully and beautifully that I could really watch you all day. Although you may not remember exactly why you can easily pull back that string ... or even why you are so strong. The months of battles we went through conditioned us harder than any training regiment really could. Seeing you smile, hearing you laugh ... all these things, I can honestly say that this is the happiest I have ever been in my life. If these are going to be my last days, then it is exactly how I want it to be. I can move on to the seal without any regrets. I know it may be hard at first, and maybe it's selfish of me to know that the time we spend together now might make it that much harder for you. But I can't help but be selfish when it comes to you. Or that I only have days left in my life. Even as I am counting down, I will treasure our every moment together. All I want is for you to be happy, Yukari. I wish I was the man that would be the one always there to make sure that happened. But I guess you don't always get what you want. And perhaps it is much too selfish to hold on to you until I take my last breath. But still, I love you, Yukari. I hope you'll forgive me and my selfishness in my last days. I just want to see you smile until I fade. Love always. Arisato, Minato. July 13, 2009, evening. Minato was eating a hamburger from Wild Duck that he had gotten on his way back to the dorm. Sitting at the bar in front of the kitchen, he couldn't really ignore the tense atmosphere behind him. The atmosphere was so tense that he was sure that it couldn't possibly get any worse than it was. Well, it was a step up from them before, considering just a short time ago the two would avoid being in the same room together. Perhaps they were all hoping to go to Tartarus tonight, but Minato had no intention of taking them when there was such dissonance among C's. Minato also didn't have the energy to deal with any of their crap either. It's almost summer break. Do you have any plans? Fuka boldly broke the silence. Luckily for her, Junpei was quick to step in as well. I wish I could go to the beach. Hot sand, cool breeze. Babes in bikinis. Man, it sure would be nice, Junpei mused. Somewhere in the south, where the water is crystal clear. But first, we have exams to worry about. What a drag. Now. You'll be fine. But yeah, I'd love to go somewhere famous for its beautiful beaches, like Okinawa, Fuka added, more in the attempt to break the tense mood. Well, it's not Okinawa, but how about Yakushima? The chairman suddenly entered. A disadvantage to Minato having his music on while eating. While he could hear the others converse just fine, he couldn't hear the front door open. It didn't used to bother him, but now he felt like he needed to be more mindful of the man Akatsuki. Mr. Chairman, I didn't realize you were here, Mitsuru finally spoke. Minato could tell that Mitsuru was more concerned about how to repair the disparity within C's. She knew that it was obviously the reason Minato had refrained from talking to any of them since the rift in their team had occurred. And that if something wasn't done, that rift would only widen. I happened to be in the area, so I thought I would drop by and tell you my schedule for next week. Mitsuru, Your father will be vacationing in Yakushima over the break. Ikatsuki clearly had a point he was going to get to. Minato finished the last of his hamburger and took a drink of his soda and mostly pretended to be ignoring the whole conversation. You all have some time off after exams, right? Why don't you pay him a surprise visit? Ikatsuki suggested. Obviously there was a reason why Ikatsuki wanted to go there. But why invite Seize to go to? Sure, it would be a good chance to talk to the current head of the Kirijo group and possibly get more information about things, but in reality they might be providing cover for whatever Ikatsuki was planning to do. And Minato doubted he would be able to easily follow the chairman. Seriously? We're going to go on a trip? Yes. Beach babes, here I come. Junpei cheered. It was easy to tell where his mind was. At the very least that was part of the reason Minato liked Junpei, because he was generally a good and straightforward kind of guy. Mitsuru would no doubt be hesitant. Her father was the head of large corporation. It wasn't every day he would be given a chance to vacation. Yukari gave a annoyed sigh, men. Although Minato didn't think she should be surprised, it was Junpei after all. She should know him by now. How about it, Mitsuru? Ikatsuki pressed. But, my father is a busy man, I don't want to ruin his vacation. Mitsuru definitely seemed uneasy. Minato wagered it was because she didn't want her father to see Seize in such disharmony. And she definitely blamed herself for the state of things. Minato wished he could say it wasn't her fault, but her not fully disclosing the situation to all of Seize was her mistake. While Minato had told Yukari it hadn't been the best way to confront her about it, he still felt Yukari had full right to be angry about it, as it involved her father who died around that time. Ikatsuki laughed a bit. Don't worry. No father would be upset with a daughter who came all that way to see him. You've all done a great job. You deserve to relax for a while. We already know when the next operation would be, so it should be fine. Obviously Mitsuru considered it. The bad thing was that Minato agreed that the team did need time to relax and away from Iwadai and Tatsumi Port Island. Anywhere that Tartarus couldn't be seen would be nice for a changes. After all, things were too tense around here. Yet he couldn't help but hope that Mitsuru would reject Ikatsuki. Even though Minato already figured she would say yes. Alright. I guess everyone needs a break now and then. Let's do it. Mitsuru got to her feet. Junpei immediately began celebrating the victory and quickly turned into a mishmash of chatter. Akihiko made a comment about making a special training regimen, and Minato was sure that Fuka said something about buying a swimsuit. Minato glanced over his shoulder for a moment as he saw Mitsuru walk off towards the stairs, followed immediately by Yukari. Maybe Yukari was apologizing about what had happened. Some of what he had said to her might have affected her. Either way, the location of a getaway didn't bother him in the least. He could enjoy himself no matter where they went. He didn't really care for beaches, it often reminded him of one of his adopted parents. At least the sea and being on a boat portion of it. Hey Minato, you pumped for the beach trip too? Junpei grinned from next to him. Minato merely shrugged, doesn't matter to me. Come on, dude. Wouldn't you want to see the girls in bikinis? He nudged him. I'm not sure if they want us to see them in bikinis, Minato said in a flat tone. I enjoy the beach, but I also value my life. Besides, I doubt girls nowadays go to the beach to stroll for dates. And I seriously doubt any of the girls care to show off for us. I get it, you're playing it safe in front of the girls, but you really can't wait. Junpei laughed as if he had figured Minato out. Guess that means I actually have to buy a swimsuit, Minato groaned in defeat. Junpei seemed satisfied and was back to planning how he wanted it to go. Minato finished off his drink and gathered up all his trash and went around the counter of the bar and threw the trash away. He turned and started washing his hands in the sink as Yukari entered the kitchen area. Seeing as she didn't seem to have any real goal in mind, she obviously wanted to talk to him. So he took a wild guess. How'd it go with Kirijo-san? Am I that easy to read? Yukari sighed. No, I guessed, Minato shrugged as he turned off the sink and grabbed a nearby towel to dry his hands. Sometimes I can never figure out what you're thinking, Yukari glanced at him. So you say you spend time trying to figure it out then? He questioned, giving a slight smirk as he finished drying his hands and putting the towel back by the fridge. Why was he playing along with her? He really was still irritated at her. And if I do? She grinned back. I'd say you're wasting your time. My thoughts aren't that hard to figure out. Minato's previous playfulness was gone as he walked past her, but Yukari grabbed his shirt, stopping him. He glanced over his shoulder to look at her. Minato noted that the rest of C's were just on the other side of the bar. But they wouldn't be able to see that Yukari had stopped him. Not that any of them were paying attention to them anyway. You're still mad at me? This wasn't a question, it was a statement. Yukari actually sounded like she was on the verge of breaking down. Why would anything Minato did be of interest to her? It didn't matter. I don't want an apology, Minato said quickly through gritted teeth. I've heard enough of those in my life. Yukari said nothing but also did not let Minato go. He didn't move but also wasn't eager to stay around. I know exams are this week. But will you go shopping with me on the 17th? I have to get a swimsuit and I want to make it up to you. I don't want to have our friendship ruined because of my thoughtless and brash behavior. The 17th then, Minato nodded and felt as Yukari let go of his shirt. He wasn't sure why she was so worried about what he thought. Maybe he had been too harsh on her before. But then again he didn't believe he said anything wrong. Ignoring the others, Minato headed up to his room. He would go over his notes for the midterms before he headed to bed, and that might take a while. At least for the next few days he wouldn't have to think about shadows or persona. He let out a short laugh. How bad is it when you actually look forward to a test to escape your problems? March 9, 2011, afternoon. It was just before lunch when Fuka and Mitsuru had returned to the group. The rest of the group was definitely nervous with the information that they might have gotten. Or maybe they hadn't learned anything more than what they already knew. However, it changed when they realized the two girls entered with what appeared to be a folder in Mitsuru's hands and placed it on the table of the lounge that they were all sitting comfortably around as Yukari had been reading to the rest of the group. Yamagishi and I found a lot more than we had anticipated, Mitsuru said softly. Yukari knew that tone. Yukari's mind began to race on those words. Her heart had begun to beat faster as she waited for Mitsuru to continue. Minato's parents were indeed employed by the Kirijo group, Mitsuru said as she slowly flipped open the folder. Her hand shook slightly and put down a photo. Cayenne and Miyuki Arisato were their names. Cayenne, Minato's father, was a researcher, and Miyuki, his mother, was an assistant to another scientist. Eiichiro Takeba. Everyone was taken aback by this. So Yukatan's dad did know Minato's parents. Junpei was the first to speak. Yes, but that isn't everything. Mitsuru was shaking much more visibly now than before. It was hard to find this out now. Still, Yukari could tell Mitsuru was doing her best to keep her composure. Mitsuru pulled up another paper from the folder and put it on the table as well. Minato was in a local daycare while his parents worked. It was owned and operated by the Kirijo group. The main point of it was to research the possibility of awakening of personas at a younger age. You gotta be kidding, Akihiko muttered as the implications became more alarming as everyone present put these facts together. I wish I was. Minato was one of the original test subjects, ever since he was born. And his parents who worked within the Kirijo group had no idea. There is correspondence and other evidence here that shows that they had been hiding research on several of its employees' children. Mitsuru closed her eyes for a moment. We could have known. We could have told him. Mitsuru was close to breaking. Everyone wasn't sure what to say. Fuka was the next one to speak. Actually, there is more. We pulled up several of Minato's early records in his life, and the ones around his birth seemed to be vague, so we did some more digging. Early reports indicated that Minato had a twin, a sister, but it was reported that she died at childbirth. However, it seems that wasn't the case. Fuka leaned over and pulled out a picture. It was that of a girl their own age. She had brown hair and vivid crimson-colored eyes. Her name is Arisato Minako, or rather it should have been, but because of what happened at her birth she was named Takahashi Hamuko in case either Kaie nor Miyuki Arisato ever somehow came across documentation that in actuality, their daughter had been stolen at birth. And a branch of the Kirijo group was responsible for it. He had a twin sister? Yukari felt her mind go numb. Her eyes were open but unfocused as the reality of it sunk in. Minato had a sister. And had never known. Would never know. She felt like someone had twisted a knife in her. How? How could that happen? She was taken away to another Kirijo group facility. For a different experiment. However, after the Port Island incident and Mitsuru-senpai's father took over the group, he cancelled all shadow-related research as well as persona research. The kids involved were put into the foster system and most likely the origins of Hamuko were never found out. So there would have been no way for anyone to make the connection without confidential access to the entirety of the Kirijo group database. At least that is what the documents indicate. Fuka was just as heartbroken as the others but had a little more time to deal with the facts than the others. Plus focusing on the data was something Fuka did to help cope with situations. Yukari just felt like she was being overwhelmed by this sudden information. And the things that it now implicated as a result. However, we don't know if the Arisatos knew Yukari-chan's father beyond work or not by the documents we have found at any rate. Except it's a fact that can't be denied. It's possible that Arisato's family was more connected to the original case than we thought. And there is also that he has a sibling that is still alive. Akihiko went over the facts. Damn it, Junpei turned and punched the nearby wall. This is so messed up. Minato thought he was abandoned by his family because no one ever came for him. He had family the whole fucking time. It was heartbreaking to hear all this. But they would all be lying if they said they regretted finding out. There was no changing it now. Yukari had to know to what level her father knew Minato's parents. And maybe her mother knew about them but had merely not remembered it. There could even be photos somewhere that proved it once and for all. Yukari knew what she had to do. I need to meet her. I have to tell her. Yukari looked at the others. It was a mix of feelings but all of them seemed to agree. Well, normally I wouldn't agree to divulge the whole tale of personas and what happened. I think that you're right. Arisato would have wanted it, Mitsuru said. Also, while we were able to determine that Hamuko was a part of a Kirijo group experiment, we weren't able to determine what it was for or what it entailed. Do we know where she lives now? Igas asked. She lives in a small beach town north of Tatsumi Port Island. It's called Minato. Mitsuru went through the folder and pulled out another paper. There is also a closed Kirijo group lab there, so it may have been the place where the experiment had happened. The files for what they did and more about the Arisatos could be contained on a closed server there. Minato? Akihiko suddenly looked up. Wait, wasn't that place just in the news? It seems there are reports of mysterious disappearances, Igas supplied. Although the list of those that had disappeared has not been released. It's a small town, so I'm not sure if I'd be able to dig up that information without being there. Fuka seemed concerned. The smaller regions are still taking their time converting to an online database. The timing for it is a little too convenient, Mitsuru sighed. I'll see if I can track down an address of where Takahashi is currently residing and if I can get any further details about the situation in Minato. Yukari got to her feet. She couldn't focus her thoughts. She needed to reaffirm something, so she pulled the journal to her chest. She took a few steps away from the group. I'm going to go check up on. Of course, Mitsuru smiled. Take your time, Junpei added, adding a smile of his own. She moved through the halls and down to where Mitsuru's room was. Greeted by Mitsuru's head maid, she ushered Yukari into the room. She moved to the other side of the room where perhaps an oddity was by comparison to the rest of the room. Yukari placed the journal down on the armrest of a couch and moved over to the piece of furniture that would normally be out of place. Still, she had been a little selfish since the journal had arrived, but Mitsuru and her head maid had been there to support her. A cry from within the furniture she approached caused Yukari to move over a little faster. She bent over to reach in. "Don't worry. Mommy is here, Pokro." Yukari picked up her baby girl and cradled her in her arms and seemed to ease instantly the moment she had picked her up. She gently moved over to the couch in the room and sat on it. "You're already close to 6 months old," Yukari gently whispered to her child. "That emotional roller coaster seems like such a long time ago, but it really wasn't. And everything happened so fast." Yukari couldn't believe her ears. "I'm sorry. What did you say?" The doctor gave a comforting smile. "I know it is difficult, but it is the truth. You're pregnant and about a month along." She unconsciously put a hand to her stomach. "Pregnant?" she repeated as her eyes felt as if they had glossed over. Yukari couldn't focus her vision. "For sure?" "Yes," he replied. I see." Yukari began to cry. What should she do? Her mother would be furious and then everyone would spread rumors about her and she fumbled with her purse and reached inside. She sent a text message to the only one that could help her right now. The truth being, after further tests, that she was actually closer to 2 months along, not 1. Which could only mean she had been pregnant from the end of January. Around the time she and Minato had first made love. It had been a sobering thought to think of. At that time, they had no idea if they would both make it to see tomorrow. Being pregnant or the chance of becoming so. That had never been a concern to her at the time. "I was so scared back then. There were so many questions I had to answer, and not to mention all the glares and lectures I got from the adults. Stuff like, how could you throw your youth away? And why would you let this happen? But it also came with a lot of pain," Yukari breathed. "And who is he? The one responsible for this clear lack of responsibility?" the teacher asked. Yukari couldn't help but avert her eyes as she felt the all-too-familiar pain that accompanied this. Answering it would only bring more accusations and demeaning to his name, but she had to answer either way. "Arisato Minato is the father." HMPF, clearly he was an irresponsible young man, the teacher muttered. The pain in her heart was quickly replaced with anger. "Take that back," Yukari said in a tone that clearly intimidated the teacher. Clearly it is too soon to discuss such things. The teacher seemed to instantly disregard what she had said. "Take it back," Yukari repeated. The teacher actually got annoyed at her. He died because of some health issue, right? Obviously he was irresponsible if he couldn't take care of his own health. Yukari slammed her fist on the desk. "Don't say another fucking word. Don't you ever talk about him again. You don't know a fucking thing about him." Kokoro had been born on September 17, 2010. Somewhat premature, and there were some mild complications, but everything had worked out. And her beautiful baby girl had been born. "I think your father might have rubbed off on me in more ways than I thought," Yukari smiled a bit. "That Minato could have a temper, but you'd have to do something really bad to make him angry. But don't worry. Daddy was also the most kind and thoughtful person in the world. Even before the two of us had started going out. Although sometimes I wonder if maybe we had been dating and just hadn't made it official. No one on Seas found it surprising when they all found out." Yukari shifted Kokoro in her arms as the new information she just had was in her mind. "I forgot to tell you the important news, Kokoro." Yukari did her best to smile for her baby girl. "You have an aunt. Your daddy's twin sister. We have a lot to tell her though. But we have to. For you and your daddy." "Yukari?" A voice entered the room. She looked up to see Fuka. "Oh Fuka, please come in," Yukari motioned for her to come sit on the couch next to her. "How's she doing?" Fuka came across and sat down next to her. "Kokoro is doing wonderful," Yukari smiled. "She seems to enjoy Yakushima," Fuka added. "I need to thank Mitsuru for taking care of her while I've been reading the journal. I would have had it a lot harder without all of you." Yukari looked out the window of the room. "All of you understood why I had to have this baby. No matter what." "Yukari, I always mean to ask. But why did you name her Kokoro?" Fuka asked, looking at Kokoro. Thinking for a moment, Yukari finally spoke. "Want to hold her for a bit? I'm actually about to get to that part." Fuka was a little confused but eagerly scooped up Kokoro into her arms. Yukari picked up the journal from next to her and opened it up, and a smile appeared on her face. Kokoro was the name that Minato wanted if he had a girl for a kid. July 17, 2009, after school. He was standing against the wall just outside the archery club. Guess it took longer than she thought. Minato sighed and turned the music up on his MP3 player and closed his eyes for a moment. "It's been too long since we've gone to Tartarus, my muscles feel stiff." He moved his left shoulder a bit and realized he should have at least been doing some stretches off and on, considering how active he was. Then again, doing kendo and then fighting and Tartarus would do that to anyone. "Sorry I made you wait," Yukari said, coming out of the archery club. Minato pulled off his earphones but didn't turn them off. "We still have a couple days of finals, and I thought your club was over until then." "That's true, but my senpai wasn't sure if things were stored away properly at the end of practice, and so she asked me to check," Yukari said as she turned and locked the door to the archery club. "Do you usually close up the club?" Minato asked, curious. "Actually, I'm usually the one that sets things up for morning practice, and every now and then I lock up too when the captain is busy," Yukari shrugged. "Didn't realize you did so much," Minato commented. "Then again, I have a harder time waking up than you. You're usually gone before I even come out of my room. Or when I'm half asleep going into the bathroom. You do look like a zombie on most mornings. And I'm sure you don't remember most of them. I think I heard on a couple of mornings that you asked how you got to school," Yukari laughed. "Oh, you actually listened to my morning rambles?" he grumbled as he rubbed the back of his head. He glanced to her and saw her smiling. She seemed so relaxed with him, and he wasn't sure why. Although it was the summer months, Yukari had her pink cardigan tied around her waist instead of wearing it. He could clearly see the choker she always wore, which was more obvious in the summer uniform. More than that, he also noticed the chain that held the charm he had given her. Although, the charm itself was hidden underneath her shirt. He knew that he would feel awkward when she had asked him out. He just hadn't known how awkward it would be. He was way too conscious of Yukari at the moment. He took the moment to turn off the music from his MP3 player. "Alright, where are we off to first? Come to think of it, I haven't gone clothes shopping since I moved here." "Well, you seem to take good care of your clothes. And isn't like you have much time to do that," Yukari poked his shoulder. "What do you mean?" He raised an eyebrow. "Oh please. You're like one of the busiest guys on campus. You're in the kendo club, and the photography club, and I think someone said you were even in the fashion club," Yukari grinned. "Been researching your target?" Minato laughed. "People love to gossip about you," she giggled. "Well, maybe I do stand out a bit too much." Minato and Yukari were now leaving the campus. "So how much do you do? Aren't you a part of the student council as well?" Yukari asked. Minato averted his eyes and thought for a moment. He didn't want to lie, but he wasn't sure how to tell her the truth either. Well, he'd have to just keep it vague. "I just like to keep busy. It helps challenge my mind and helps keep me out of trouble," Minato sighed. All of it was true. He didn't like to admit it, but he had been a troublemaker at a few of the schools he stayed out. Especially in the smaller towns where there wasn't much to do. He didn't really have many friends to keep him out of trouble for that matter back then. Still, he couldn't help but wonder if it wasn't for the social links if he would be doing as much as he was. Which made him glad that exams were going on. Strangely enough, it was when his life seemed the most normal. After all, he didn't have to think about social links or Tartarus. Speaking of challenging your mind, how are your finals going so far? Yukari's smile didn't go away, and even though he tried to keep his attention elsewhere and seem uninterested, his eyes kept being drawn back to her. Pretty good. I think I was more effective in my studying than last time, Minato shrugged. That seems pretty modest considering you snagged the number 6 spot during the midterms. Yukari legitimately seemed impressed with him. He was kind of happy about it. Minato hadn't been aware that he even showed up on Yukari's radar outside of Seas and Tartarus. You weren't bad yourself, you know. Minato gave his own compliment while deflected the one she had given him. Another topic change was needed, so exactly where are we heading first? Well, there are a few stores around the mall. Wish I had known about the beach trip earlier. If I had, I could have gotten a swimsuit when all the summer fashion started coming in a couple months ago. Not to mention it's probably more expensive now since their selection is smaller and summer won't be around much longer. I'm not sure I'll find one I will even like. Yukari's answer was a lot more detailed than Minato thought it would be. I guess you like fashion then? Minato said, putting his hands in his pockets. It's a hobby of mine. I like to go through the current trends and other stuff from fashion magazines. Don't laugh, but sometimes I'll even cut up magazines and try and make my own outfits. Yukari blushed. Why would I laugh at that? I have a passing interest in fashion myself. Minato and Yukari weren't actually that far away from the mall. It wasn't actually all that far from the school. Only about 10 minutes in length by walking. So it's true you are in the fashion club? Yukari seemed like she hadn't believed that what she heard was true. Yep, although I'm not sure why it's called a fashion club. We do more sewing and clothes designing than actually being concerned about what is fashionable or not. But we do pore over fashion books to draw inspiration from. Minato tried to keep his voice more matter-of-factly rather than betraying how much he really enjoyed it. It was more than he thought he would. I'm working on making myself a kimono. Aren't those hard to make? I guess, he shrugged. I got time to perfect it before the festival though. That's true. Yukari stopped and grabbed his hand. Let's go into this place first. The next moment Minato found himself being dragged into a women's clothing store. He wasn't sure why she had grabbed his hand, maybe she thought he wouldn't go in otherwise. Either way, she dropped his hand as she began moving through the clothes racks. Mostly the swimsuits. This store is a lot bigger than how it looks on the outside, Minato commented as he took in the scope of the store. From the outside, the storefront was only about 16 feet wide. It just didn't show how far back it went. And it went back quite a ways, with changing rooms in the back for customer convenience. So, risotto, one piece or a two-piece? Yukari quickly asked. Two-piece, he said without hesitation as he went through a rack of clearance shirts. That was a quick answer. Why do you say that? She asked. Mostly because it takes confidence to wear. I mean, there isn't anything wrong with a one-piece, but generally it's considered a safer route for those that aren't comfortable with their bodies. Minato was looking at all the shirts and not really looking over to Yukari. So you more or less like a girl with confidence, Yukari surmised. I don't believe anyone should be ashamed of who they are. That includes how they dress. Minato pulled a shirt off the rack. It was a pink tank top. He looked over to Yukari, who looked like she was debating between a few of the swimsuits. Takeba, what do you think of this shirt? She looked over. Oh, that looks cute. I don't know your size though. Do you wear a medium? He asked dryly. Yeah. She said with a somewhat embarrassed look on her face. He frowned. Do you want me to stop? I mean, you did invite me out with you, you know. No, it's fine. I'm just not used to it. Are you saying you aren't embarrassed at all? Yukari diverted her gaze elsewhere. I don't mind. Besides, there used to be this really pushy girl that used to drag me out shopping with her all the time. She was indecisive as hell and would try on half the store before she even knew what she would want, he explained while letting out a sigh. Let me buy this shirt for you. I'm sure you could use it. From what the weather report said, it will be pretty hot at Yakushima when we're there. Although no telling if it will stay that way. Okay, Yukari said shyly. She looked at the different swimsuits in her hands before shaking her head and gathered about 6 of them up. I'm gonna go try these on. Will you tell me what you think? Of course, Minato nodded. He watched as she disappeared to the back of the store where the changing rooms are and he let out another sigh. Feels like we're on a date. Must be why it's so awkward. He went up to the register and bought the shirt and had it bagged before moving to the back of the store and sat down on one of the chairs that was there for people waiting for those in the changing room. Honestly, he didn't have an interest in fashion until Junpei had mentioned how popular Yukari was. And how she kept up with the latest fashions. Kenji didn't help things by giving comments about how he thought Minato wasn't exactly the most up-to-date on fashions. Soon after that he would meet Bebe and end up joining the fashion club. Much to his surprise, after all this time his passing interest had become a bit of a small hobby. Originally he was just trying to learn more as a conversation starter with Yukari, but he never actually got around to using it. Strange how it ended up working out anyway. Yukari then stepped out in the first swimsuit. It was a pretty standard two-piece suit, except it was yellow. The yellow was perhaps a little too glaring. She boldly stepped out in front of him, and didn't seem to have a hint of embarrassment. Either that or she was mustering a lot of her willpower to hold it in. What do you think? It looks good, but I don't think yellow is the right color, Minato said honestly. Yeah, I thought so too, but I wanted to get your opinion. Alright, one moment, let me get into the next one. Yukari disappeared back into the changing room again. Minato was sure if anyone knew that he was out with Yukari Takeba and she was showing off swimsuits to him, then it would escalate to a rumor and go through the school so fast it would make anyone dizzy. Was she really that worried about what he thought? He had been angry with her and the way she had been hiding her research into what had happened 10 years ago. And wasn't happy with how she had presented it. Except she had no reason to care what he thought about the whole thing, right? Time passed and after some time Yukari couldn't seem to figure out what she wanted. Minato thought oddly enough the pink one she had tried on had been the best, but in the end she didn't buy anything. Still, he had seen a new side to Yukari that he hadn't seen before. And it was certainly nice to break up his usual chaotic schedule with something like this. He just hadn't known how much he had needed it. In the end they had ended up at Wild Duck Burger on the way back at the dorm. Mostly because both of them had no desire to waste time cooking and instead wanted to brush up on history since that was the subject they would be taking the final on tomorrow. Minato had been using flashcards to change up how he had been studying before, and was definitely useful in a situation like this. They had been going back and forth with the flashcards until something odd happened. Excuse me, can you watch my baby for a moment? I have to use the restroom and... The woman sure looked like she needed to use the restroom as she was bouncing back and forth on her feet. Of course, Minato smiled and gracefully took the child from the woman. She quickly gave her thanks before disappearing into the bathroom down the hall. The baby was a girl, probably no older than 3 months, and looked up at Minato with shimmering blue eyes that were brimming with curiosity. Why, hello there, little one. Oh, she's so cute, Yukari said from next to him. She must have moved closer to him because she was shoulder to shoulder with him looking at the baby. I didn't know you were any good with babies, Minato. It might be hard to know that if you've never seen me with one, Minato laughed. You never usually smile that big, Yukari observed. Have a soft spot for kids? Only the cute ones, he said with a grin. His attention turned back to the baby girl. "And you are certainly very cute." "Yes, you are." It'd been a long time since he had held a baby, and after a few moments he hadn't realized he had actually missed that feeling. After a few moments the mother returned. "Thank you so much," she said, and took her baby girl back. "Think nothing of it," Minato gave a soft smile as the mother left. "So you want to have kids eventually? It seems pretty obvious to me," Yukari teased from next to him. She hadn't moved back and she was sitting right against him. Minato did his best not to move. If he pointed it out, Yukari would definitely put space between them, and he didn't want that just yet. "Of course I do," Minato answered simply as he took a drink of his soda. "It isn't that surprising, is it?" "No, but it feels nice to know. I usually only get to see you being introspective or when you're in battle. It feels like I've found a whole new side of you." Yukari seemed legitimately happy about learning this. "So since we're on the subject of kids, if you had a boy, what would you name him?" He thought for a moment. "How about Kudo?" "I like it. Does it have a particular meaning?" she asked. "Noble. Or striving to be noble. I can't remember. Anyway, if I had a son, that is what I would want him to strive to be," Minato said, taking another drink of his soda. "How about if it was a girl?" Yukari pressed. "Kokoro," he answered much quicker than before. "Sounds like you've thought of it before. How come that name?" she said as she grabbed more of her fries. Minato took note that Yukari seemed like she had no intention of moving from next to him. "Well, I've always liked names with K in it. But there is another reason," he shrugged a bit. "While I don't know myself, I've heard several saying about what happens when a father gains a daughter. That they have a tendency to steal your heart. After all, it is a daughter born from the woman you love. Kokoro means heart after all. Plus having a child can only happen when two hearts become one. Am I wrong?" "I didn't know you were such a romantic, Minato-kun," Yukari said, blushing and looking away. "There is quite a bit you don't know about me. Just as there is still plenty I don't know about you," Minato said simply. He paused for a moment. "Thank you for today, Takeba." "You're welcome," she said. "But can I ask you a favor?" "What's that?" He looked at her, but she was still looking away. "Please use my first name. You don't have to be so formal," she said. "All right then, Yukari-san," Minato smiled. March 9, 2011, late afternoon. "So Kokoro is mine and Minato's heart," Yukari breathed with a few tears escaping from her eyes. "I'm glad I was able to remember the conversation from that time at her birth." "So Risato Kokoro," Fuka smiled, looking at the baby girl that was sleeping in her arms. "And you passed his name on to her as well. I guess I was somewhat surprised by that. My mom was angry about it at first too, but I told her it wasn't up for debate." Yukari closed the journal and ran her hand over it. "After all, if Minato had been around, I would have married him. And I would have taken his name either way. Actually, I am still considering doing it anyway." "Hey Yuka-tan. Is." Junpei came in but then quickly shut up upon seeing the sleeping baby in Fuka's arms. "Sorry, I didn't wake Koko-chan, did I?" "No, Junpei-kun. I think she inherited her father's ability to sleep through anything." Yukari gave a light laugh. "What's up? Did you need something?" Mitsuru-senpai said she found out some more information and wanted to go through it with everyone. Junpei walked over to him looking at Kokoro. Yukari smiled. "You want to take her for a bit, Junpei-kun?" she asked as Yukari got to her feet and took Kokoro gently from Fuka's arms. She turned back to Junpei and saw him shaking his head. "Nah, I think you should take her for a while," Junpei said. "Besides, you haven't spent much time with her the last few days." "Yeah, you're right." Yukari looked down to Kokoro, who still slumbered deeply. She giggled a bit. She reminded her so much of Minato in subtle ways. "All right, let's not keep Mitsuru waiting." The or rather four of them went out back to the living room area that their group had kinda claimed not many other guests could do considering that the Kirijo group owned the resort. Yukari made herself a spot back on the couch and saw the others watching her as she situated her daughter in her lap. Don't worry guys, I doubt anything could wake her up. Mitsuru actually laughed a bit. Yes, she certainly seems to take after her father in that department. Everyone laughed after that, which helped break the tense atmosphere that had dominated them before after all the new discoveries they had made. I was able to contact the lead detective in the Minato area on those disappearances. I found out several interesting facts. Apparently it all started after a rumor had begun circulating the town. He said he wasn't sure if it was accurate, but the rumor implied that if you could stay overnight at the abandoned hospital at the edge of town that your deepest wish would come true. And supposedly that is where all the victims disappeared at. Also there is some bad news. I learned that Takahashi is among the latest victims to disappear there. Mitsuru reported. Damn. But why does that sound familiar? Junpei thought for a moment. It sounds like the time when I disappeared, Fuka answered from her own seat. And if there was a Kirijo lab there, it could be possible that there could have been some sort of incident, Ken spoke up from the other corner of the couch. Yes, it is a possibility. There could be shadows involved, Mitsuru sighed. However, there is no way to know without investigating it. Then we should go, Yukari looked at the others. If Minato's twin sister is in danger, then we need to go. I agree with Takeba. Besides, if shadows are responsible then we can't ignore it, Akihiko put in his agreement. Is everyone in agreement? Mitsuru looked at everyone. All of them agreed. Yukari, I can have my maid take care of Kokoro while we are gone. Yukari shook her head. I want Kokoro to meet her. But if it's dangerous. She was conflicted. Once the danger has passed I can send for them to bring Kokoro to us, Mitsuru smiled. Alright, Yukari nodded. She trusted Mitsuru probably more than anyone. Maybe that would be considered weird because of how much she distrusted Mitsuru at the beginning. Minato had pointed out the obvious to her, it isn't that you distrust or even dislike Kirijo-senpai. You were just looking for someone to blame for what happened to your father. And that isn't right. Of course she got mad at him for saying that so directly. But deep down he had been right and that was why it had hurt her so much. All that time had passed and she had never really gotten past her father's death. She felt she was in a similar situation again, except this time she wasn't alone. Everyone, gear up for battle. I'll arrange the most direct transportation I can. And tonight we'll investigate and find Takahashi. Mitsuru delved out the order and everyone nodded. Looks like Minato was right. Even though the world had been saved, that didn't mean that shadows had disappeared. They were basically a reflection of humanity's darker emotions, so they would always exist. She was going to be fighting again. And oddly enough she felt at ease with this. After the others had disappeared one of Mitsuru's maids appeared. San, please take good care of my Kokoro, Yukari said with a smile. I will, Yukari-sama. Also Fuka-sama has returned your journal to your room, said as she bowed. Yukari got to her feet and moved over to and handed over Kokoro. I leave my daughter in your care. I shall not betray this trust, Yukari-sama. Spoke formally but Yukari could see the gentleness in her eyes. Mitsuru's maids were handpicked and so Yukari knew she could trust her because she trusted Mitsuru's judgment. I know, Yukari gave a final kiss on Kokoro's forehead. Mommy will see you soon. She's going to go find your aunt. She turned and began heading towards her room. Looks like I'll be going into battle again. I hope you're watching over me, Minato. I'm going to save your sister.